Peace and love, y'all. It's your brother A.D.V.I.S. And we are back with another episode of What's the Word Wednesday Season 2, Episode 29. I know it's a 2-week break and things that was going on, but we are back in here, y'all. So, much love to everyone that's coming through. But like as we usually do, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put up the logo that we have as well. Is there no audio? Let me know. Hold on. I'm about to say there's no audio? Because I might have to do my redo real quick. Hold on. There's no audio? Y'all let me know. I gotta make sure. Can y'all hear me loud and clear? Cause I can hear myself. So I was about to say, I was like, I can hear myself, yeah. But appreciate y'all. Much love, everybody in here. I see you, Kundan. See you. Good to see you. What's going on, E.D.V.I.S in the building? I appreciate everyone that is in here, as well as those who will be watching this later, whether on Instagram or YouTube. On YouTube, follow your boy at A.D.V.I.S Speaks. Like, comment, share, subscribe, as well as hit the notification bell so you can get more videos again, because we're back on this when it comes to content once again. But with that, y'all, I'm going to let a few more people come in while I'm going to go ahead and post in the comments our topics for today. So, for today's episode, coming back from a break, like I said earlier, coming back from a 2-week break, we're going to be getting into the topics of current events. So, basically talking on what's going on right now, at least what I've seen in the news as of late, as well as second topic we're going to get into, we're going to talk about the pro label. So what we're thinking when it comes to the pro label, and have a conversation around that. And then lastly, to round out the show, we're going to be talking about the expectations of standards. So we'll see what that looks like. But with that, y'all, letting already some more people come in, but what we're going to end up doing now is let's get right into the show song so we can get to doing this current events. But once again, peace and one love to all y'all. Let me know how y'all doing, how y'all feeling, and what's the word. Anything is in there, as well as if y'all have any comments or anything that you like to share and bring to the stream and alive, please throw them in the comments. You are welcomed to. But with that, let's get this show song. And yeah, y'all make sure y'all can hear me. But I know y'all said I'm good, but we always gotta double check with it. Because when they ask you, this is what you gotta tell them. What's the word, y'all? What's the word? What's the word, y'all? What's the word? What's the word, y'all? What's the word? We tell them like, what's the word? What's the word? What you heard? We gotta know, yeah, what's the word? Peace and love, y'all. It's your brother A.D.V.I.S, and we are back with another episode of What's the Word Wednesday, Season 2, Episode 29. So, shout outs to y'all. It's a break, but we back here getting focused and continuing with sharing and spreading what the word is. So if y'all in there in the comments, please tell me how you feeling, how you doing, and what's the word. But for today's episode, as I said before, we're going to be looking at current events. And secondly, we're going to get into the pro label. And lastly, we're going to talk about the expectations of standards. And during any part of this time, after the news, please, you are more than welcome to join the stream. And if not, to interact during the comments. I highly appreciate it, and I'm grateful for it. As well as if you do come on, just know that this is also putting on YouTube. So just letting you know, if you're not comfortable, then the comments is for you. If not, please come on and share your perspective with us. Now, with that, y'all, let's get into this current events. Now, I already see a comment right now from Kundan, and I am going to speak on that. But there has been a lot going on. I don't have a lot that I really want to speak on, but there's a lot of stuff that's happened in the prior 2 weeks, but I'm not going to bring a lot of those things back up, because then this whole show would be about news, and that's not what we're doing today. But in the comments, it says, OMG, so much big stuff has happened, such as the Pandora Papers and the Facebook whistleblower. I'm gonna speak definitely on the Facebook whistleblower, but tell me a little bit what's going on with the Pandora Papers. I really want to hear about that. But with that, let's get to the first one. So the first article, this comes from CNN Health, and the article title reads, Los Angeles to require proof of vaccination for indoor restaurants, gyms, and theaters. So for all my Cali folk, I shouldn't say Cali, I should say specifically in Los Angeles, so LA County folk, just know that basically now you must end up having some type of proof so that you may be able to enjoy indoor restaurants, gyms, and theaters. But let me get into detail. 2 paragraphs and we are out. What's going on, Sue? Peace and one love, fam. What's the word? Let me know how you feeling. We just getting some news in. All right, 2 paragraphs and we're out. So, article reads, Los Angeles City Council voted Wednesday to require patrons at indoor spaces such as restaurants, gyms, and movie theaters to show proof of full COVID-19 vaccination starting November 4th. So this is going to be following next month to figure out, okay, are we going to continue to let, folks come in without it and at least get a buffer of an idea of what's going on, or just give people also time to get the shots? But let's see. It's continuing. The ordinance will also apply to personal care establishments such as spas and hair salons, as well as city buildings. So if you gotta go to the DMV or you gotta go to the courthouse, anything of those sorts, you will also need to show that proof along with your ID and all other different things. That is basically going to become the new form of ID. New York has already done something to this nature. I don't know what, I haven't followed all the way to the T, but basically between California and New York, it's going back and forth with a lot of these things of being the first states to do and implement things when it comes around to this pandemic and crisis. So let's continue. And while the measure doesn't go into effect until next month, businesses must display advisory notice of the requirement by October 21st. Individuals with medical or religious exemptions must provide a form declaring that. People who do not meet those requirements can use the outdoor spaces of a business and will be allowed in covering spaces to use restrooms or pick up orders. So, the city will require patrons at large door events with at least 5,000 attendees to show proof of vaccination or a negative COVID test. So y'all, there's a lot more. The last thing I'll put at this right here is the vote. The vote was 11-2, where the council comes to as a countrywide proof of vaccination requirement is going to go into effect. So it was voted 11-2. So we will see November 4th, at least within Los Angeles, LA County, of this happening. But I've actually spoke on this to many other of my friends and colleagues and folks, and talked about the progression of how this really is going to look and transpire throughout this pandemic, almost going to be stretching to the point where it's going to be hard to go grocery shopping, all these different things. They've already starting to implement this stuff. We will see what this will do for the fabric of society and connection, but part of it is for the safety, while other parts seem like it's also another hidden agenda and thing behind it. But again, I am just reading from the article. That is it, and stating what I'm getting from the article. But if y'all have anything else for this article, again, which is from CNN Health, and it reads, Los Angeles to require proof of vaccination for indoor restaurants, gyms, and theaters. Leave it in the comments, y'all. And before we get to the next one, I know Kundan in here put some stuff down here, so I wanted to read about the Pandora Papers. So let's see. Pandora Papers is like the sequel to the Panama Papers, a list of millionaire, billionaires, and celebrities hiding their money in offshore accounts to avoid paying taxes, but also in South Dakota. Interesting. I mean, honestly, folks within that tax bracket have many different ways of how to secure and keep their wealth, whether if it's through tax write-offs, from being altruistic, which basically is giving donations and to charity, or buying pieces of art, putting them into the museums, but then also gaining money off of that. But at the same time, since it was a contribution, they also can get a tax write-off for that. So there's many loopholes. So I'm not surprised trying to avoid and duck and dive and evade. I mean, we can talk about, previous president and those whole issues of tax invasion and evasion. So I appreciate you sharing that about the Pandora Papers. Appreciate you doing that. Next, and I didn't even give y'all at least the updates of where all this news is about. So first parts of this is going to be, again, updates about what's going on with the pandemic, specifically shots, booster shots, etc. Second part, we're going to be I'm talking about more so a lot of things that may be happening within Mother Nature. A lot of it is geared towards what's going on I've been seeing in Cali. And then we're going to talk about, lastly, the Facebook whole situation, Instagram shut down, all this other stuff. But more likely what happened with the whistleblower. So let us continue. Next article comes from MSN, specifically is also CNN. And the headline reads, studies confirm waning immunity from Pfizer's COVID vaccine. So, again, almost months back, we've already spoke about there's been a study that was coming out showing that these were possibilities. Now there's more studies confirming this. So, let's dive in. 2 paragraphs and we're out. Headline reads, or I should say, article reads, 2 real-world studies published Wednesday confirm that the immune protection offered by 2 doses of the Pfizer COVID-19 vaccine drops off after 2 months or so. 2 months or so. Though protection against severe disease, hospitalization, and death remains strong. So, it's basically saying that the efficacy of, or at least this is the first one, we'll continue. The efficacy and the effectiveness of the shot falters and falls after a few months, but the percentage is still somewhat in a higher percentage, or at least within that median range of it being effective, because anything that's over 50% is effective for use. Anything under that cannot come nowhere being used, at least when it comes to branding and all this other different stuff. But it's saying that it's still helping to prevent a lot of severe disease, hospitalizations, and deaths, but it is slowly declining. What's going on, brother Chairman Dallas in the building? What's the word, brother? Let me know how you doing, how you feeling. All right, let's continue. The studies from Israel and from Qatar, if I'm saying that right, Qatar, and published in the New England Journal of Medicine support arguments that even fully vaccinated people need to maintain precautions against infection. I'll say that one more time, and this is from the article. Fully vaccinated people need to maintain precautions against infection. So make sure you are still following and doing what you need to keep yourself healthy. Everyone from the virus, just take care of yourself regardless, because we've been told different precautions and different updates and rules when it comes to regulations of wearing a mask, not wearing a mask, having to do this. Even if you get the shot, now you gotta do that. Just take care of yourself. Do what you need to. Eat healthy, exercise, meditate, read, relax, get enough sleep. Do a lot of these things that you would normally do, and make sure that you are taking care of yourself and your body. It will make it very hard for any type of virus to affect you, unless, of course, you have comorbidities, which are differently hereditary conditions and diseases that might come on due to family, whatever it is. But still, do what you got to do. Lastly, one study from Israel covered 4,800 healthcare workers and showed antibody levels waned rapidly after 2 doses of the vaccine, especially amongst men, amongst persons 65 years age or older, and amongst people with immune suppression. So those folks that are dealing with a lot of those different other conditions. But I won't continue there, but just letting you know, again, from CNN, studies confirm waning immunity from Pfizer's COVID-19 vaccine, since that was the first to be not only authorized use, to get that authorization, the emergency authorization use authorization, but also to have theirs to be fully approved by FDA. So, just something else there for y'all. If y'all have more things, please, again, throw them in the comments. I appreciate your time, your efforts, and all that you're sharing. Let's see. Even Shakira and Elton John are included in Pandora Papers. I'm not surprised. Again, you said celebrities. You said celebrities, a number of different folks, billionaires, millionaires, all of that. I mean, one thing I'm gonna tell y'all too, and we're gonna continue. That's why movies and entertainment, TV shows, skits, and things of this nature, as well as even comedians when they tell their stand-ups and jokes, there's always a slither of truth in there, and you just have to be aware and see a lot of this happening. Not just only indulge in it and have fun with what you're watching, but also know that there's also hidden gems behind it that is actually trying to tell you stuff. So I know I've seen videos, or I've seen movies and skits where I always talk about offshore accounts. Why is that even a thing? Not only because of the villain or the person, the drug lord, whoever it is that's doing that. Come on. Right. Next article, y'all, still on talking about shots and things of this nature, comes from CBS News. CBS. Article reads, the headline: TV anchor, meteorologist quit over vaccine mandate. Because there's another thing, y'all. As of right now, I know in California, I know not only in California, but New York, and there's a few other places that there is the mandated time in October that you must be vaccinated by this time, or you are at risk to lose your job, have some type of disciplinary action taken on you, and so forth. So this is also causing a dip, not only in employment, but whatever that is there, as well as also a rise within vaccination. So on both sides, because now what's the option to do? You got to think about it. Put your options all there together. All right. 2 paragraphs and we're out. Article reads, a news anchor on the Mississippi Gulf Coast and meteorologists in Nebraska are among a handful of gray television employees to relinquish their jobs instead of getting vaccinated against COVID-19. An 18-year employee, Megan Gray, gave up her co-hosting role on the W-Locks TV's Good Morning Mississippi last Thursday, a day before a mandate to be fully immunized will be taking place October 1st, according to a local newspaper, the Sun Herald. The based statement from the parent, Gray Television, was requiring all employees, guests, contractors, tenants to be fully vaccinated against the virus. Gray posted on Facebook, "I tried everything possible to keep my job, including offering to be tested on a weekly basis. My requests were denied," she wrote. "I may have lost my job, but I preserved my integrity," she added. WLOX General Manager Rick Williams told the Sun Herald he could not comment on a personal matter. His email included a statement from Gray Television saying that its vaccination policy is meant to ensure a safe working environment and that exceptions were limited to certain medical conditions and or religious objections. So, again, your choices. You're either going to go along or it's time to go. A lot of things are cutting short. It's either this or that. It's white or black. It's blue or gray. It's either on the side. There's little leeway for stuff besides if you can show actual proof and concrete evidence of whether you do have a medical condition or religious objections. But those are also still subject to be constantly reviewed as well. At least from my eyes and what I have seen and read. Some places, they'll stop right after that. Other places will keep an eye on that just because of the fact that it almost becomes as in you have some type of get out of getting shot free card because of that. But again, so much of this has been politicized and put so much into the media and personnels and peoples and all the perspectives that it gets to a point where not only religion, not only politics, not only if you're voting, but also anything that has to do with society now, especially during with all the shots and things of this nature. This is also added on the subjects of do not talk about. So, what you gonna do? You figure it out. Peace and love to the brother Huey P. Newton in the building. Another legend. What's going on, my G? Good to see you in here, brother. Peace and love to you. Hope all is well. And let me know what's the word. All right. Continuing on, y'all, with some more of this news. Next article from CBS again. Headline reads, Sweden halts use of Moderna's COVID vaccine in under 30s. So let's see what's going on with that. 2 paragraphs and we're out. Article reads, Sweden's public health agency on Wednesday recommended a temporary halt to the use of Moderna COVID-19 vaccine amongst young adults, citing concerns over a rare side effect to the heart. It said the pause should initially be in force until December 1st, explaining that it had received evidence of an increased risk of side effects such as inflammation of the heart muscle, that's that myocarditis, and inflammation of the pericarditis, all of these very technical terms. To continue, the Public Health Agency has decided to pause the use of Moderna's vaccine Spikevax. So again, a lot of these vaccines, especially when they do get approved, either for the emergency, but mostly is always for FDA, they come up with a name to brand it. So there's actually different vaccines. There's the one that's under the emergency use authorization, and then there is the FDA approved one. So there's at least two of any of those brands. So you always have to make sure and see which one is which, because one will have a name and another one will just be the company's name. But with that, for everyone born 1991 and after, for cautionary reasons, the agency said in a statement, adding that those groups should instead receive the Pfizer biotechnic vaccine. So, alright, don't get this one if you're under. Go and get Pfizer. According to the agency, the risk seemed especially tied to the second dose of the Moderna vaccine and was more prevalent amongst young men and boys and in the weeks just following the second jab. The symptoms should usually pass by themselves, but should be evaluated by a doctor, it added. So, which because of those two, it says rare, but the conditions, it seems like it must have been happening a little bit more frequently that it had to be halted. The myocarditis and the pericarditis or whatever it may be. I'm saying it wrong, but basically those inflammation to the heart muscle and inflammation to the pericardium. So it's all right there having to do around in the heart in those centers. But again, take things lightly, make sure you read, do your research, and if you've already done what you needed to do to keep yourself, whether getting the shot or still waiting and giving your research and looking to make sure it makes a fit for you, just keep up with precautions, keeping yourself safe, and do your daily routines of keeping yourself healthy, whatever that may end up being. If not, reevaluate. With that, y'all, on to the next. Now, next article, I just wanted to share this since we're still in a whole hype and talk about shots and things of that nature. This article comes from NPR, and the headline reads, well, the World Health Organization, I don't know how many times y'all can go back and see me messing up on that. The World Health Organization, WHO, greenlights the world's first malaria vaccine, but it's not a perfect shot. Okay? So now we're going to read a little bit, and then after that, we're done. 2 paragraphs, we're out. The world's arsenal against malaria just got a fancy new bazooka, but it's not the easiest weapon to deploy. It only targets 30 to 40% of the time, and it's not yet clear who's going to pay for it. So again, we're talking about the effectiveness. If it's not above and around those certain heights, it's still in those trials, and if it doesn't, it may be scrapped. But let's continue. The weapon in question is the RTS-S vaccine from GlaxoSmithKline. I might have said that all completely wrong. Which on Wednesday got the green light from the WHO for widespread use. So, this is not the first authorized malaria vaccine, but is also the first vaccine ever approved for use against the parasitic disease in humans. So there's been more before. Oh, this is not only the first, but is also the one to be also approved to be against it. So I just wanted to note that. I mean, there's more about going into it. Again, this is from NPR, the news. Headline is, WHO greenlights the world's first malaria vaccine, but it's not a perfect shot. You can look more and get in detail and depth about what that is and where that brings for you the information. But that's what we got right there. If y'all have any questions, please throw them down in the comments. Let me know how you feeling, what you thinking of any of the news that's been stated so far as we continue. Got 3 more, and then we'll move on to the next segment. Now, next article. Again, we got a lot from CBS, but this is coming also from MSN. Headline reads, Huntington Beach oil spill. Sections of pipeline found damage, moved more than 100 feet along the ocean floor. So those are from my folks here, Huntington Beach. That's Long Beach, all around in that area. So let's see what is going on. Headline, article reads, 2 and we out. A section of the oil pipeline was confirmed to have been damaged and moved more than 100 feet along the ocean floor. Another indication that a ship's anchor may have caused the oil spill in Huntington Beach. Federal and state officials overseeing the response to the oil spill, which has since grown to 144,000 gallons. So you're kind of wondering why, too, with the oil prices going up. Said reports from the contract divers and remotely operated vehicles found a 4,000-foot section of the 17.7-mile pipeline was dragged literally about 105 feet and had a 13-inch split along the length of the pipe. U.S. Coastal Guard Captain Rebecca Orr said that the split is likely the source of the release of the oil. And shouts out to the brother Joe Bruce in the building. Another legend in the time and in the making. Please go and follow the brother and give him some love. Music is fire as heck. But let's continue. Almost done. If you can picture the pipeline essentially vertically, the pipeline has essentially been pulled like a bowstring, so its widest point is 105 feet away from where it was. Amplify emergency or energy, CEO Martin Wiltshire said. So it's kind of in a almost semicircle. So for y'all to recap on this, so there's a whole grip going on with this oil spill. Again, it's near the ocean floor, so this is infecting within the ocean. Again, as well as at least in Cali, and at least in my area too, prices have went up on gas. I know there's some gas stations that's already hitting about $4.50 to almost $5 when it comes to gas. So again, it's always important to make sure you take time to look around what's going on with the news, because then it has a personal impact of what's going on in your environment. But with that, y'all, it's on to the next one. This one is pertaining to what's going on the White House, in the Senate. So let's see what's going on in the government. Article comes from USA Today. Headline reads, the U.S. has never defaulted before in the debt ceiling crisis. What happens if it does? So for those that's going on, again, this is the news section. What we're doing here, especially with this one here, they're talking about, again, when we have the governments, when it goes down into the shutdown because of the fact that they're lacking money, even though we see that money is being inadvertently used in different areas, but not in very specific and crucial areas. But we'll see what happens if they increase the debt ceiling or if they just let it be. But let's see what's going on. 2 paragraphs and we're out. So, article reads, Democrats stave off one financial emergency last week, averting a government shutdown, but still face the looming debt ceiling crisis. The debt ceiling is the amount of money the U.S. government can borrow to pay for its bills. So the debt ceiling is what you use to pay your bills. The cap is at $28.4 trillion, and the national debt is at $28.43 trillion. So we are about what? That's a great question. It's about what, not even 3 trillion, but like almost 3 billion or so in debt. I'm not too sure. Don't quote me on the numbers. I'm trying to do it real quick. But again, they got to figure this out. And for those who are not too sure when it comes to money and how interest and principal interest stuff is accrued, that is why the debt ceiling or anything when it comes to money having to do with money also revolves around debt, because the more money that you have out there circulating, there's also a principal amount that's added on top of that money. So if you were to have $1 million or $2 million circulating within the world, $2 million, but you also had a principal debt on top of that, that was another $1 million. So you have 2 million that is only able to be circulated, but you have another $1 million that you have no money to pay for and be able to pay off that principal interest. So what do? You print more money so you can pay that off. But when you print more money, you create more and more principal interest on top of that, to the point you continually stay in debt. I have not heard a time yet, at least within my lifetime, that we have been out of debt. So let's think about it. But let's continue. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen has said that the U.S. has until October 18th before it faces default. Yellen also warned in a letter to the House Speaker Nancy Pelosi on September 28th that failure to act on the debt ceiling could also result in substantial disruptions to financial markets. Again, having an effect on the economy, not only with the pandemic, not only with unemployment, and also the stopping of other jobs and things of that nature, is messing around with stock market, all these different things that's going on. So we'll see what happens right now. They fight it off. They go and have the meetings to either increase it or to put out a bill to help with facilitating it. But we will find out, y'all, in the coming days to see what will end up happening all the way up until the next few weeks. But just wanted to share that with y'all. Just have a little bit of what's going on there. But last one for it tonight, and then we are on to the next topic. We have an article from CNN Business, and the title reads, Facebook whistleblower to talk to January 6th committee, which is today, and there has been some already shown. But for those who are not too sure what's going on, we could look back on Monday and we noticed that it took about almost 7 to 8 hours, if not a bit more in between that time, that not only Facebook, but Instagram, WhatsApp, and any other type of program that's tied, or application that's tied to Facebook, was down for such a long time. Now, during that time, there's also the whistleblower who came across. I literally do not do good with her last name, but Frances Haugen. There's some people saying Hagen, but it's Haugen if it's correct. Came out and did an expose exposing Facebook and their data and their practices of really profits over efficacy or ethics of people's health. So she's talked today. Let's see what some stuff has happened with it. Right. Article reads, the Facebook whistleblower who released thousands of documents that she said the company knows its platform are used to spread hate, violence, and misinformation is expected to meet the House Select Committee investigating the January 6th riot at the U.S. Capitol as soon as Thursday. 3 sources with knowledge from CNN says about January 6th. It just clicked. Frances Haugen, a former Facebook product manager with stints at several other big tech companies, went viral, or I should say went public with an appearance on 60 Minutes. So there's video, you can look this up, 60 Minutes on YouTube, and testified before the U.S. Senate subcommittee on Tuesday. So that's where she went on Tuesday. The Select Committee is also interested in hearing from Haugen. CNN has learned as she could provide insight to how Facebook was used to ultimately facilitate violence that occurred at the U.S. Capitol on January 6th. On Monday, House Intelligence Chairman Adam Schiff, a California Democrat who is serving on the Select panel, tweeted that the Select Committee will need to hear from her and get internal info from Facebook to flesh out their role. So this is, if y'all don't know too what a whistleblower is someone who comes out and exposes the acts of whatever company or rules and ethics that are going on and shares them with the public because of, not going to say in a sense of righteousness, but in a sense to expose the company for those practices that are against helping. You know, in short, there's a better term for it, but that's what ended up happening here. And now she has come forward and now she's doing a lot of testifying to show and give her data and information, all of it back from Facebook that she got. So, wanted to share that, y'all. But other than that, that is it for the news section. If y'all have any other news or anything else you want to talk on, please throw them in the comments. I appreciate it. And I thank you for your time and your participation. Now, moving to the next part of the show for today, we are going to be getting into the topic of the pro label. Now, before we can even preface the pro label, I got to give y'all at least some definitions, or at least give you some idea of where we're going to go with it. But when y'all hear the word pro, what are the first few things that come to mind? Put them in the comments, whether here now or later on. Throw them in the comments, y'all. Let me know. What do you think pro means? And as y'all are doing that, I'm going to go through and I'm going to read a few from, you guessed it, Webster's Dictionary, because it has different definitions from different places. But I also like the Free Dictionary because it does the same thing. But anywhere you can find a definition. Right, in this particular case, I'm going to go through a couple for pro. So the first one having to be with it being a noun, which it says an argument or evidence in affirmation, which is appraisal of pros and cons, is an example. The affirmative side or one holding it. So on one particular side of something. And the adverb, again, on the affirmative side. So it's on one particular side. Like we do on here, we do the pros and the cons. So in that particular case. Another one is in favor of. One of them is of objective, is also short for professional. Pro, we have an acronym, is a public relations officer. One for the prefix having to do with an earlier time prior to, as well as rudimentary, which rudimentary basically means basic. The basic like setups or rules or standards of stuff. Standards. And I give you another one, which is taking the place of or substituting for. But those are all the pros. Okay, there's so many more, but I don't want to scurry off too far away from it. But you're saying, okay, you gave me all these definitions. All right, where are you going with this whole idea with the pro label? Well, in mind, what I really wanted to speak on when it came to the pro label is in terms of not only political identification with things, but also almost the pros and cons of using that as a label, because we're almost speaking and talking about labels. Kundan, there's also the pro as in professional, but in this particular case, like I just said earlier, more so the political ideas of what a pro is. So, what I really want to tap into on this is really talking about how that label is used not only to identify folks, but also depending on what side that is for, it has a negative idea of what it is. I mean, for example, being pro for, getting rid of children, before they're even born. They say it's pro-life, but then also pro, the other one. As well as for some folks that I know, for me, is being pro whatever racial affiliation you are. And how in those particular identities that you put yourself in, there are rules, there are expectations, and there's also standards that are set. Some are written and some are unwritten. But I want to speak on it in a way that, pro as in for something instead of anti. Yeah, yes. Like how we do pros and cons. Now, in the sense of how that label of pro in those particular identities, again, I'm going to use, for example, being pro-black, what that means, as well as when are you not, or when are you being that. So my argument, or I shouldn't even say argument, my perspective and reasoning on that is, when you label or put yourself pro for something, it's almost very, very hard to have a balanced view or have leeway. And what I mean by that is, in the example, if you're pro-black, for example, if you're pro-black, you have to literally be you have to be for everything that's black. So it gets to the point of like, okay, well, that means if I want to start a family with someone who isn't, does that still mean I can be pro-black? And through those eyes, again, we start to create those folks who are in the middle. We create the extremists on the other side, and we create those who just do not give a care at all. And what happens is you get an internal battle. Whether this is the way you can do it, or the way you can't do it, or you can't do it. But then it starts to create also these rankings. It also creates the idea that, I'm more pro-black, or you're less pro-black because you do this, this, and that. You're not following this particular rule, because when you mean you're for something, you got to be for something 100%, which we know that's very difficult to do, if not close to nearly impossible. But just in that same example, I just wanted to talk about how, even though we use the word pro as in to signify something that is good, in the reverse side, it can also be used for something that's quote unquote bad, or in a sense can lead to negative outcomes. Yes, for example, say as in pro-life is actually pro-birth. How such labels are used to trick people. Yes. I'm glad that you put that there, because again, it creates not only a rhetoric, but it creates the idea and the belief behind not only bigging yourself up to be better, but also to leave yourself not, again, open to listening to everything because you're straightforward on something. But even those folks that are very straightforward on it, and some that are questioning it, deciding, okay, maybe this is not it, again, they get attacked. So it's almost like you're getting attacked from within yourself. You in the same camp, but then now you're thinking, man, maybe I should have more of a balanced view on this. But then people who are there who say they're really pro for something start attacking you. Again, it starts to create this narrative again of not only us versus them, but it's either you in all the way or you're out. There's no in between. And again, like I said, that can be damaging, at least in my perspective. It can be damaging because of the fact that it starts to create even more division on top of all the other division that we are already currently working with. It just creates even more and more barriers for folks to really open up and listen when you put yourself in that particular label. And I'm not saying, okay, again, on the other flip side, I'm not saying that it's a terrible thing, but you're going to know that it has a connotation and has a denotation, which means has a dictionary definition of what it is to be pro whatever you want, but also the connotation from what people think about it and also see it in behaviors and actions. So you have to be very wary and aware of what type of titles and labels you want to put on yourself when it comes to stuff like that. I mean, others are less severe and less political, like pro-life or pro getting rid of a child or baby before it comes out, or pro-black or pro whatever particular, affiliation organization that you're a part of. I mean, funny ones be like, I'm a pro skater, like anything skating, like, I appreciate that. But again, it can go all the way to the extremities of, okay, but you also know that when skateboarders do stuff like this, are you still pro skateboarder? So it gets to that point that the questioning very, very, very so to the point of, if you put yourself in that particular label, either you gonna be on the hill with it and stay up there on the hill with it, or you gonna come tumbling down off of the hill. So it's all up to you when it comes to that whole idea. So let me see. I see y'all throwing some stuff in here and, putting some comments. So let me go ahead and read these comments real quick as we continue. As in pro-life is, I made a related post last week on the 6 thinking hats of Edward D. Bono to diversify your thinking beyond pro and con, positive, negative. Yes. We speak in those because, again, we're in a very dichotomous as well as a very binary system. So we will always speak in the left and right, the up and down, opposites. That's just how it is, at least in a natural sense. Those are the two very, not say blatant, but those out in the open. Those are the perspectives. You see the sun, you see the moon. But don't forget, there's also stars, but then there is also clouds, and then there is also rain, there's also wind. There's a number of different things that come together. So there's always going to be the spectrum. But again, the very obvious ones are the ones that are going to be pointed out. So whether or not you're pro, con, up, down, left, right, if you don't expand your thinking beyond that, that type of thinking can get very detrimental. Again, like I said, even though it could be something that you're pro for, even those folks within being in that pro label have those expectations, have those standards that if you don't meet those, they can be either written or unwritten. You're not that label. So you shouldn't label yourself that. There is no leeway. There is no going back. It's either you're going to go forward with it or you are just out of the group. So it just gets to that point that, again, like I said, it creates even more division, creates so much more confusion. And it gets to a point that, again, it's not only used in a political way, but it begins to create more closed-minded folks. In my perspective, you can say it doesn't and everything is good and fine, but I will rebut and say, well, look into society. What do you see? You see folks who are either on different sides, either to the very, very extreme or to the point where it's like, I don't care at all. And you can tell and see just through their behavior, how they act. And then that label of pro, you get labeled as being, oh, those are very problematic people. It's to a point where I'll do this, y'all. I'll take it a little bit further and y'all can end up saying, you can stop me. Or y'all can say, please put in the comments, appreciate y'all. It gets to a point that you got people on the news. And there's even articles. You can look this up. Of folks. And again, this is the whole thing between vax and the vax-nots. But for folks who decide that they do not want to put their children and themselves in certain situations because they have not received the shot yet, they have been written off as domestic terrorists. Because they're pro, but this is a label, they are pro-choice. Choosing what you want to do. We're not talking about in that particular case when it comes to the life whole situation thing, but also for your body. But now, again, those people are seen as extreme. And then on the flip side, if you're not all in for it, then you're also attacked. So again, it just creates this conundrum. It creates confusion and creates so much division to a point that, we can't even address what really needs to be addressed because everybody's trying to figure out how to label everybody. And if you're not labeled on this label, then that means you're not part of my label. So that means you can't work with me. And then when you can't work with me, that means you against me. You see? Create so much of that. And we don't need this back and forth as of right now. There's so many bigger issues that we can be tackling. Yes, like what's going on with the pandemic. But also, yes, people talk about it in a cheesy way. World hunger, universal health, as well as better eating habits, all these different things. But we decide, no, we're going to just continue to just indulge in what's going on with, oh, you're this side, I'm that side. We're going to continue to indulge in that and not really tackle what needs to be tackled. We love looking at the symptoms, and we love only addressing what we see on the outside versus going to the root of things and seeing what we need to work on internally. It's so much easier to just point at what we see in the flaws on something outside, rather go ahead and look at what's going on within us. Again, someone's told me before, when you out there pointing one finger, you got three fingers pointed back at you. So you got to look at yourself not only once, twice, three times over, and evaluate what's going on with you before you evaluate what's going on with somebody else. But let's see these comments. What's going on, Diamond? Peace and love, as well as peace and love to the brother West Coast Ninja in the building. If y'all love Twitch, please go follow the brother on Twitch. He is got content, as well as he is very engaging on his Twitch and things of that sort. So please go follow and show love, as well as what's going on, Kundan. Peace and love to you. What's the word? Welcome, welcome,
What's
welcome.
the word?
So I see you have some stuff up in here, and I was just trying to make sure I get back to it. So like you said, yeah, there's no room for nuance. It's like I'm not 100% pro for the shot for Pfizer, but that doesn't mean I am anti-vax. I support the Cuban vaccine, for example. Yeah. So it's, again, when you are set to a particular thing, there is no leeway. We've said it already. You have to be all in. It's just like if you at the casino and you're deciding you want to be playing small and small and stuff, you know you're not going to win big unless you start putting large amounts or you go all in. But what happens with that is very detrimental, because you are betting your life or you're betting the money on that end that you have on a possibility that you're going to lose and not have it at all. But that's how it's looked at when I'm talking about the pro label in any way. That literally you're all in for this, and then if you don't continue to be all in for that, it's done. You can't use that label. You're not worthy to use it because of the fact that, no, you didn't follow A, B, C, D, E, F, G all the way to a T. It's, oh, you did A, B, C, D, you was failing on, E, you didn't even know what it was. It is just like, okay, who really tells folks that you are 100% pro for this and you're doing it correctly right? Again, like I said, it's what people, again, come up with their expectations and standards of what it means to be pro this or also for pro that. But I know you got some stuff to say, so go ahead. Let me do your thing.
Yeah, I wanted to talk about two things. One, the thinking hats, which I'll get to, but I also wanted to even talk about how, there's another angle, another level to this where people can be so pro that they're anti, which is ironic. Like they can be like, especially in the people in the new age colonial spirituality,
Mm,
kind of industry where they're like, oh, I don't want to be anti-war. I want to be pro-peace. I don't want to be anti-racist. I want to be uh, pro-racial justice, etc. Right?
yeah.
It's that false binary, and it's like, why can't I be both? Why can't you be both? Right? In
Mm,
fact, you can be both anti-racist and pro-racial justice. You can be both, you know, uh, anti anti-war and pro-peace at the same time. You know, uh,
mm,
yeah, and you can be both like pro. You can even be both pro-life and pro-choice at the same time if you really care about life, right? Like the irony is people who are pro-life, they're just pro-birth, but the moment the baby is born, they're like, oh, stop being a moocher, stop being a loafer, get a job. Even though the baby just got born, they can't even have a job. And I'm exaggerating, but you know what I mean, right?
yes,
Uh,
yes.
yeah.
What happens with that, and I'm glad you
Yeah.
brought it up, is
Yeah.
what you said, the pro and the anti is like they cancel
Mhm.
each other out. It's like, okay, you
Mm-hmm.
went so far to a point where it's like, do you remember what you was even really riding for in the first place?
Yeah,
As well
yeah.
as what happens is, again, when we talk about you're on this side and I'm on
It's
that
like the
side,
term Antifa. People who are anti-Antifa, I'm like, do you even know what you're saying? Like,
yeah, yeah. Again, people just making up labels to be making labels nowadays,
yeah,
just to not only
yeah.
show that they're a part of something,
Mm-hmm.
but they're your
Mm-hmm.
morality in their particular case, as well as, like
Right,
I was
yeah.
saying, if you're on one side and then somebody's on the other side, guess what? Remember, we have multiple sides, and if you only get
Mm-hmm.
one side, so say you can only stay on one side of the world, you will never know what the other side of the world looks because you're like, no, I'm only for this one side. So it already
Mm-hmm.
limits the amount of places not only that you can go and visit and see, but it also limits the perspective of man. Maybe what I have here may not, some things here may not be as great as what's on the other side. But since I chose this side, I can't go to the other side. Versus, like
Mm-hmm.
you were saying, the whole idea of you being pro life, but also pro choice at the same time, it gives you that perspective, like almost of that full circle of like, yo, full circle of life, that, yo,
Mm-hmm.
I understand that you are for life and that's what we want to be for. But at the same time, if circumstances have happened that it really is hard, for you, and it's would make more sense for the choices that you make for you to still end up really feeling pro-life because of you're looking down the line of things. When you make decisions, sometimes it's just not abruptly. You take time to really
Mm-hmm.
think them out. You just don't do it suddenly unless that it calls for it. But again, you
Mm-hmm.
take time, put that together. It's like, oh, okay, now you understand those sides, and you can be for both of those sides. But again, the terms they're going to be switched and changed. But that's what all this labeling can do. But at the same time, like I said, it can also create more
Yeah.
barriers.
Yeah, the people who, call themselves pro-life, but they're actually pro-birth, they are also ironically pro-war, pro-death penalty, right? And so it's very, you can see the inconsistency. Like,
Mm-hmm.
whereas I have a friend of mine, I don't agree with him, but at least I respect his consistency. Like uh, he is pro-birth, but he's also vegan, and he actually fought against the draft during the Vietnam War on grounds of religious
Mm,
exemption,
yeah.
um, because he considered himself to be pro-life, which means which means if you're truly pro-life, you also have to be anti-death penalty, anti-war, and a lot of people are not, and that's another example of where you have to be both pro something and anti something, right?
Yes. Yes.
And he was that, he was like consistent, right? I'm like, okay, at least you're consistent, you know.
Exactly. And I mean,
Yeah.
look, and that's honestly one of the other parts of why I wanted to bring up the pro label, and you've already
Mm,
literally put it there, is if you're going to ride for something, you got to be consistent with it. So you got to know
yeah.
your ins and outs of this stuff. I just can't
Uh-huh.
jump on the line. I can't jump on the line and be like, you know what? I'm pro biker,
Hmm.
but I'm on a motorcycle. So I'm for motorcycles. I'm not with cars.
Mm,
But I also don't like what's going on with emissions. But how can you be
hmm.
for the motorcycle, but then know that you're also causing those same emissions
Hmm.
out into the atmosphere because you're using gas?
Hmm.
But again, that's like, okay, that's, I mean, that gets to a point. It's like, okay, then, A.D.V.I.S. Calvin, like, literally, like, you don't want us to just start just picking and pointing at every single thing in our life to a point
Hmm.
that we have to be on every single side of something to be correct. No, I just want to bring awareness to it. That's the whole thing with this. It's just like really breaking down that literally these labels, even the pro label itself, can have a negative aspect to it, just depending on the way
Hmm.
that you look at it. And you have
Hmm.
to be very aware and you have to be cognizant of that, because if not, you'll get in situations like this, and some people will experience cognitive dissonance. And
Hmm.
cognitive dissonance, for some of y'all, if you don't know, basically that means you have two different competing thoughts in your head, one of them being
Hmm.
something that you've already believed before, and then new information that comes in that counters that. And you're like,
Hmm.
wait, so being pro biker also means I can't be anti this? Like, wait, what? And then it gets you
Hmm.
get to that point where you wonder why. Okay, Why don't I know what's going on, or why can't I do this certain thing but also be on that side too? It opens up
Mhm.
again the conversation for you to start looking deeper. But I know
Mhm.
sometimes it's hard for folks to be able to take time to be able to do that because we're in survival. A lot of people are in survival mode. They're only worrying about what they're going to get, their basic needs and necessities, especially with what's going on right now. So I get it. But for those who are able to, I'm glad that I'm at least in that sense always be privileged to come on here and talk about stuff like this.
Mhm.
So at least you be like, oh, okay, that's what he means. That's it.
Mhm.
It's just opening up like that. I'm not perfect. I know there's
Yeah.
some stuff that I'm wishy washy on
Mhm.
both sides, but I take
Mhm.
it in stride and I try to learn. That's it. It's just putting in
Mhm.
the effort. That's all.
Mhm. The other thing, as you said, is, you know, just pro and con itself is a false binary,
Mm-hmm.
and that's why I like the six thinking hats that I posted uh, last week. And it's been around for 30 years. It's written by, created by a guy named Edward de Bono,
Okay.
and that book I read it in my teens. I'm 40 now, right? And I think that book is the reason why I didn't totally buy into, toxic positivity culture. I bought into it a little bit for a few years when I was still in that colonized mindset,
Yes.
with that whole new age colonial spirituality mindset. But the six thinking hats was like in the background in those days, so it was still kind of influencing me. Now
Yeah.
it's totally in the foreground. And I redigging it, and that's why I posted that. And I
Mm.
love that, it's basically six different ways of thinking, including pro and con, the positive and negative, right? But there's other ways of thinking, and I love that it actually starts with the blue hat, which is the meta thinking, which is not just
Mm.
thinking about process, but also thinking
I
about
have to think
thinking.
about the process. Yeah.
Yeah, you have to think
Metacognition.
about,
Yeah.
yeah, metacognition. You have to think about which way of thinking you want or you need to solve this particular problem.
Yeah.
Out of the six thinking hats, right, that he created, which one do you need? Or maybe you might even need all of them in a particular sequence, right?
Mm.
And this is not to say even the six thinking hats might be limited. There are other, probably other ways of thinking, other models as well. But it's a
Yes.
good start.
Yes.
So one particular sequence could be, I posted a sequence on my profile where I said,
Y'all follow if y'all on Instagram,
so you
please.
start with the blue hat, then you start with, I believe, the white hat, which is about facts.
Yeah.
It's a neutrality, the hat of neutrality. Okay, what are
Mm-hmm.
the facts, right? So basically, it's kind of like rationality as well. And what are the facts, right?
Mm.
Then we go into, I believe, it's the red hat, which is the emotions and intuition. You think about, so the opposite of rationality, right?
Yeah.
You go into, okay, what do I feel about this? What do I feel about the problem? What do I feel about the facts?
Mm-hmm.
And you get in touch with the feelings so that you don't get too emotional,
Yes.
and then you get in touch with your intuition so that you get into the side of you that you might not be aware of, that the facts cannot tell you everything, right?
Yes.
Then you get into the, I think it's the green hat, which is the hat of creativity.
Mm-hmm.
Only after neutrality and emotions, then you get into, oh, the creativity to actually solve the
Mm.
problem, right? And then you evaluate the creativity with the black hat and the, I think the black hat and the yellow hat. So the
Mm.
black hat is like, you try to see
Subjective.
like, the black hat is the negative thinking, where you
Okay.
try to see any pitfalls, any potential for disasters, negative consequences, or unintended consequences. You see, like, okay, I'm getting excited about the creativity, but
Mm.
maybe I don't want to get too excited yet. I want to see what are the pitfalls, right?
Yeah.
But because you started with neutrality, you don't get like too sucked into the negativity either. It's from coming from a neutral place. So you don't get too discouraged, when normally you might get discouraged if you, usually when creativity is followed by immediate judgment, then you kind of become less creative, right? But
Mm.
when you start with neutrality, it's less discouraging, right? And then after the black hat, then you go into the yellow hat, which is like the hat of positivity. You go into, it's yellow because of the color of sunlight, right? You like to think
Mm.
about, oh, okay, what are the positive results that can be positive? Now that I have a very realistic perspective because I use the black hat. Now I can have uh, be free to be positive because now I know, you know, I know my limits and I
Yeah.
can like be like imagine beyond the limits in a very realistic way. So it's like very beautiful sequence, you know.
Mm. And I will say this: I appreciate you sharing that. That's really dope because I've heard it.
Hmm.
I mean, I've heard of concepts like this, but weave
Hmm.
together. Like I do appreciate that because honestly, the way that it can be set up, if done correctly, too, it almost can align with the whole setups of not gonna say the chakras, but what I also thought of too for folks to look up and get into as well is we actually have almost 2 to 3 different brains if you really want to think about it.
Hmm.
And I'm gonna put it out there. I'm like, wait, what are you talking about? So yes, we have of course our brain that's here in our mind, but also we have our heart is also that, as well as what we call the intuition, which is that gut feeling. All of these
The
three
gut,
pieces
yeah.
together, honestly, are not honestly. You can look this up. There's a whole thing
Yeah,
called
you
the
can
gut.
look it up.
You can just call it the gut. I had to look it
The
up just in
gut-brain
case. The
connection. They've
gut brain
literally found
connection.
neurons,
Yeah.
brain cells in the gut. And then
Mm-hmm.
the biggest nerve goes all the way from the brain to the gut. It's the only nerve that goes all the way up and down, which is why you
Exactly.
can stimulate the gut. You're stimulating the biggest nerve right here behind the ears. You can even put like low-level electrical stimulation. There's a
Yes.
company called FieldZing.com that sells low-level electric patches
Mm-hmm.
for like just $5 and you can use it twice for each patch. And I've used it. And the first time I used it, like I wrote like 2 poems in like 10 hours. Like it was, my creativity went up to the roof. It was amazing.
Sending those information. And the reason why I wanted to bring those out, Charles, because what brother just said, there are different neurotransmitters and cells that are in all those different regions. So on our heart,
Yeah.
and then we
And
have our
in the heart too, but in the heart is they're not exactly neurons, they're neuropeptides. They're like neuron light cells.
exactly.
Like,
So me in
yeah.
that sense, it still has at least part of the makeup in there. And what I want to
Right.
get to is when we talk about we and look at we have sayings, which I'm gonna tell y'all, and at least in English, we have multiple different sayings that say all of this and it confirms it. Why do you say we have right here is like thinking with your brain right here, but then also when people say, think, you got to think with your heart when it comes to stuff, or if you feel that intuition in your gut, you're also thinking there too. So there's sayings within English that already confirms these things that scientists
Hmm.
then look up and find that, the brain gut connection. Oh, the heart has certain almost parts that are very similar to the makeup of the brain, and it makes sense of why we say stuff that we do. But in that perspective, that's why going back to tie back into the whole pro label and things of that nature is being limited to just only one thought and one side and one perspective. We speak about it a lot on here, but I have to keep on re-talking about it so we can get it there. Is that is not doing a service for anything that you want to learn and see. And for me, that ends up, of course, for me, I came up, not came up, but it's probably out there somewhere in the world too. Of the levels for me of understanding, and if I decide to not literally only stay on one level of understanding, which I'll explain again, then that's limiting me from getting a whole wide view on just one particular subject. So for me, my levels of understanding, I have 4 of them, just from a whole inner outer perspective. But we have the understanding, which is the base, and then you have the understanding, which has to do with self and how you interact with things and understand things. Understand, get it? Then we go to the next one, which is overstanding, and that's basically
Hmm.
to also pair back to you have your understanding, but overstanding basically now you see how what your actions and your views from a whole wide view has an effect on the
Hmm.
community or whoever else you are.
A
To the
bird's
last
eye
one,
view, yeah.
yeah, and then to the last one being the outer standing, which is basically you see how this has a whole effect of almost like the micro to the macro. So what your environment also is a shown of how that is also affected within the world, universe, etc. Which these
Hmm.
levels are connected. We have the understanding, overstanding,
Hmm.
understanding, outer standing. So that's how at least I use that those levels to at least help with me when it comes to looking at subjects and things in that view. Which again, you have these other six types of thinking, because if we're only stuck in one type of thought and thinking, we're not going to be able to go beyond anywhere further. We're going to be stuck where we are, and we're going to get, oh, you're for this, so that means you only this, and this, and we continue with the labels and labels to the point that we lose sight of what we really standing for.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, and this, this model has been around for 30 years, and it's really like, I believe a lot of like companies and like big corporations like actually use it. It's actually more well known in business and corporate,
Yeah.
because the funny thing is like, uh, corporations tend to, unlike us, we at best individuals, we think in terms of 5 years, right, for the future. They tend to think in terms of 25 years. The sad
Mm.
thing is they think in terms of 25 years, not for our welfare, but for their own self-protection, for their own self-preservation. You know, have you seen the finale of Goliath on Amazon?
No.
Goliath
And for
is about
those, if you
this.
want to see it, spoilers are coming right now. So if you're gonna go see it, go off the stream, or I can't tell you when to not listen or anything, but I'm fine with getting spoilers. But if you don't want to know the end, you've been warned. All right, go ahead.
Well, it's not totally a spoiler. It's just a lesson that I learned. Basically, that corporations tend to like. I was surprised, was a little bit surprised, but not shocked, to learn that corporations really like, yeah, these big corporations. In this case, it's Big Pharma. Every season is about a lawyer fighting for the little guy against a big corporation.
Mm.
I think the third season was about climate change and these big corporations stealing water and stuff like that. And then the finale is about Big Pharma and the opioid crisis.
Mm.
So it's based on reality because, you know, uh, Big Pharma knew that opioids were addictive, right? And they
Yeah.
did it anyways.
Yep.
So it was based on the true story. And a lot of those things in that shows are based on true facts, but it was like they go so far as to like hire lawyers 25 years in advance,
Yeah.
uh, and give them little jobs, you know, so that they cannot sue them in the future due to a little thing called attorney-client privilege, which
Conflict
is
of interest.
supposed, yeah, conflict of interest, which is supposed to protect the client,
Yeah.
normally it's supposed to protect the little guy, but they use it to their advantage. Uh, by hiring like hundreds, if not thousands, of lawyers and give them these little jobs because the rule is once a client, always a client. Like,
Yeah.
yeah,
Again, look at, man, y'all can follow the money
yeah,
and figure out all of these
yeah.
different details and loopholes. That's why it's so hard to not be fully invested as well as protected when it comes to laws, because you can always find some way to flip it and change it thanks to the English
Hmm.
language and how language can be moved and formed.
Yeah. So it's no surprise that for the little guy, like things like the six thinking hats are not as well known as if they are in the corporate
Yeah.
sector. That's the point I'm making. Like they think very far ahead, but for diabolical purposes. I'm like, what if we could use the same type of expanded visionary thinking, but to actually help people?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Again,
yeah.
will it create profits though? That is the situation. What a
Hmm.
business is, when you go into business, you really go into business for only a few things. One,
Hmm.
initially for whatever your mission and your purpose
Profit
is
over
for every
safety,
this. And, yep.
which is what the Facebook kiss as well was
Facebook, yeah,
saying.
exactly.
She was saying the exact same thing. She was like, Facebook cares only about profit over safety,
Yeah.
which is the same thing with big pharma. It's like every big corporation is like that. Yeah.
Yeah. Look at y'all. That's why. Why do you think? And again, whatever, YouTube, Instagram, forget y'all. But in this particular case, I read them from articles. You can go get mad at CNN and them. But there's a reason. There's a reason why a lot of the stuff that we have right now, the shots and things and stuff like that, is pushed. Because
Mhm.
who's behind that making a profit? If y'all not buying the
Mhm.
products and it's not happening, then who's making money? Who isn't? Why do you think we talk about pharmaceutical companies like we do all the time?
Right,
Is that
yeah.
they're not going to be in, they're going to not continue to make any revenue or money if they're creating cures or they're creating people as they're coming there to really help them with their health and leaving. Because one customer that's been helped, you ain't gonna be able to get them again. That's why we have with a lot of our stuff. That's why you gotta update. If you're on the trend of updating your phone every single year, then that's you end up because, and then you come to find out later on that there was I think we've already talked about it before too, but with the iPhone specifically, that older models were slowing down because the software that was also when you would update the iPhone was done purposely by Apple to make sure that you go ahead and upgrade to the next one because of the fact they were slowing it down. And that's already they already went to court for
Yeah,
that long
there's a
while
term.
back and was sued again. And if
Yeah,
y'all
there's a
check,
term for that. It's so prevalent. There's actually a term for that. It's
yeah,
called planned obsolescence.
yeah,
And they do that with a lot of electronic appliances. Even blenders don't last more than like 2 or 3 years.
yeah,
Uh, and it's getting worse and worse. Like I think I had a Ninja blender that lasted only like a year. Yeah.
exactly. Again, so it's almost to a point of when selling products nowadays, you know, the expectancy for a lot of these products to be very small outlived. That's why some of these warranties, 30-day warranties, and some of them maybe even give you 6 months or an additional year. But beyond
Mhm.
that, after it's out, they know people these companies know their products, and nowadays I kind of find it hard to say like long lasting, durable, and all these different terms for a long time is very hard to use because of the fact that if we got something that you have a product for almost 10, 20 years plus, why would you end up needing a new latest model when the other one is still working? Now we
Right.
coming
Even
out of
when
our
you buy the
pockets.
warranty, it's only 2 years. Like we
Yeah.
recently bought an iPad. They say, oh, you can buy a warranty, but it's only a 2 year warranty.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Look it, I know
Yeah.
we're on we like it's like we almost scaring off somewhere else, but I mean
Yeah.
in a sense with a lot of this, y'all, it's knowing
Yeah.
that
And
with these
that's the
labels.
point is like they have the visionary thinking, but only for themselves, not for the planet
Exactly.
and for other
Exactly.
people. What
Ex-
if, they could actually have that visionary thinking similar to like indigenous people who think like 7 generations ahead,
Hey,
that they
yes.
do it for everyone, they do it for the
Mm-hmm.
planet, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Again, because we're in the system that we're in,
Mhm.
which if you do you have any last thing for this? Because now I think this is about the perfect time to flip into the last topic. But do you have
Yeah, yeah,
anything
yeah.
else?
I think that's all. Like I just wish these types of ways of thinking, these expanded ways of thinking that I wanted for the little guy, the little girl, the regular Joe. That's basically it. Yeah.
Mm,
Yeah.
beautiful. Now we're moving to the last topic.
Mm,
Going off of that initial thought that you had with indigenous
mm,
folks and them doing it for the 7 years, that's where it leads
mm.
us to talk about the last topic, y'all, which is the expectations of standards. Now, the reason why, and all I gotta do is shout out to the brother Sabi Smooth in the building. One
Hey,
is
yo,
the booth is
yo.
in the building. What's the word, brother? Um, but again, off of your example, the expectation of that is that standard to be able to support and help the world in all. But the piece of that is their intention. Again, we speak about it a lot. The intention behind it. And now, in this particular case, the system where we at right now, the expectation, since we are, what is that? Keep on forgetting the word capitalism. The
Capitalism,
expectation of
yeah.
capitalism and the standard of that is to sell. To sell, make
Hmm.
money, do that. So the expectation of in that particular case, this is for to help everyone. Capitalism is like, nah, like I need to make for me. Like I need to get money for
Hmm.
me. So it wouldn't make sense. The standard for me was to continue to make money for me, not to help everybody. I mean, once I help myself, oh, you can come and you can see. But at the same time, it's like, nah, that's not that expectation is standard.
Mhm.
But on the flip side with a lot of this too, and I'm gonna preface it as well. Yes, I'm gonna give some definitions so we can have an idea of this, but I'm gonna go a few ways with the whole idea of expectations of standards, because then expectations with the whole thing being that, you know, people expect a certain thing, not knowing what that thing might actually be, and then seeing realistically what the standard of that is. So I want to we're gonna go all over the place with this. But first, for y'all up in here too, y'all want to join along with us, let me know when you hear the word expectation, what's the first thing that comes to mind? As well as when you hear the word standard, what is the first thing that also comes to mind? A word, phrase, whatever it may be.
I
Throw
think
them in the
about
comments.
attachments and rules,
Mm,
commandments, obligations, guidelines, uh, things, something you expect to happen, which means you you think it will happen with no
yes.
doubt. So there's certainty to it, uh, even though it even though that's not entirely true. That there's a lot of uncertainty in the expectation. But
Mm-hmm.
many people, I think, assume that there's gonna be a certainty when there's an expectation,
Yes.
which is why you get disappointed.
Yes. And there's another piece that I do want to add in that as well too. With it, but we're gonna continue with it. But first, as y'all are still putting them down in the comments, and the brother over here, yes, Sabu, I've been had these lights. You just wasn't tapped in. You didn't know. Like I got the lights in the background on my face. Just how it goes. You know, spice it up a bit. But I'm gonna read out some definitions again. If y'all want to know, Webster's Dictionary. That's where they from, and that's how it is. All right. So for expectation, the noun definition of it is the act or state of expecting, so anticipating, like you were saying earlier.
Mhm.
Something to be expected, the basis for expecting, so some type of assurance, you know. Another one for expectation, let's see, it has some synonyms. Um, a prospect of an idea of like, okay, this is what can end up happening. It's really what expectation is. Is you're wanting something is supposed to come out of this. You're anticipating. So not in the Pavlov's dog type thing, but like literally, if you know somebody that keeps showing you love or they keep buying you food on a day in out basis, you're going to expect on Monday that they're gonna also buy you lunch. So things of that nature when it comes to you
Mhm.
thinking of expectation. But that could also go for values, things and stuff of that nature, which we'll get into. Now, for standard, a noun. This particular one, there's multiple different ones. I'm not gonna go to all of them, but one of them being an object, usually a banner, formerly carried at the top of a pole, used to mark at rallying points for a battle or to serve as an emblem. So they're saying the standard also being an emblem. Um, Another definition: something established by authority, custom, or general consent as a model or example. So criterion or criteria. So you have those rules and laws. Another one: something set up and established by authority as rule for the measure of quantity, weight, extent, value, or quality. And then another one, which is a very interesting one, um, is talking about a bush, but we ain't got to worry about that. There's so many different stuff on here. But something else with it is having recognized and permanent value. So that's all the definitions I'm going to share for a standard. Now, for the topic of conversation, a reasoning with the expectations of standards. The first thing is what you already were speaking on.
The standard is also a flag, like a banner.
Yeah, that's what it said as an emblem. It could be used as that. But again,
Oh, interesting.
yeah, again, English language, multiple definitions. So there's not just one universal
Mm-hmm.
definition for a word. That's why I
Mm-hmm.
put all of these out here. Maybe you might learn a new part of what you didn't think the word standard was, but at the same time, I don't want to lose y'all. I
Yes.
may lose y'all because
Yeah.
I'm putting too many definitions, but then we bring it back to why we're going to use it
There's
for the
also
discussion.
musical composition,
Yeah.
even
Yeah,
the
because there's a
vehicle with
standard.
the.
Because there's a standard when it comes to music, as in the
Oh
frequency
yeah.
that's also used. Oh, so what's
Hmm.
the question now? The question, brother, is now we're speaking about the expectation of standards. So I
Hmm.
want to go a few ways with it, but the first thing with the expectation of standard, kind of going off from we were speaking earlier about the pro label, is literally if you think that you're for something, you already expected that you're supposed to act in this particular manner because you expect these standards to already be there and set in
Hmm.
stone. But
Hmm.
what ends up happening, just like Kundan ended up saying earlier, is just because you have those expectations for something and then you get to that point where it's like, whoa, that's not exactly what I thought it would be, you become disappointed.
Hmm.
And my point with that also being that too is some of these standards and things change just like laws. So it's very hard to expect something out of a standard, especially if it's something new that's being changed and constantly moved. But on the other flip side, that I really wanted to get into when it came to the expectations of standards, and Kundan, you can say other things along with it,
Hmm.
is this idea, and I've brought it up before, but it happens out of what happens when you have expectations and standards. This idea of entitlement
Hmm.
and how because you expect something from a particular standard, you've already think that you're entitled to it because you meet that already. Just because the standard is that
Wait, because you meet that you expect it from other people?
yes, you can expect it
Oh.
from other people, but also yourself is that you can
Hmm.
meet that. So you're trying. So it's almost on the outside of like say you're applying for a job. Would you do like that? You're applying for a job. You've already went through and you saw all that's expected of you. It's the job, um, duties and things of that nature, as well as the required, experience, all of that, etc. Also, you go through and you see their standards that they're for this because they're helping with um, say homelessness, or this is for they're for health for everybody and things and stuff of that nature. So you already is like, okay, I meet these expectations, also meet the standards based off of that. So in this particular case, and I'm going off of because of our very individualistic society and our society is if you meet these things, you should already be able to have that opportunity and that outcome to be what you want it to be. But that doesn't mean that you're going to get the job because guess what? There's competition and there's other folks who also meet those expectations and also meet those standards. And for me, it just creates that cycle and that ideal of entitlement, which shout out to Jordan Peterson. He talks about how there's the difference between the the opportunities, the expectations of opportunities, and also there's going to the expectations of outcomes or equality of opportunities and also the equalities of outcomes. Those
Hmm.
things are two different things. Just because you have an opportunity to get to something and you may have the setup and everything that's there, you're not expected to get that outcome. And
Hmm.
you can't be upset and you can't be frustrated and you can't be mad just because of the fact that you didn't get that outcome, just because you already set those expectations and you're on those standards.
Hmm.
So I mean, that's at least the point. One of the points that I wanted to
Hmm.
get when it came to this is really just to also go into that piece of the entitlement part. But what do you got?
Hmm. No, I just wanted to simplify the definition of standard because I saw this one definition. It says the basis of value in a monetary system, such as the gold standard. And taking that, I think it's also true that it's the basis of value just in general too. You
Mm-hmm.
know, and that I think simplifies it and clarifies it more. It's just so a standard is basically the basis of value, how
Mm-hmm.
you're valuing something, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes,
And how you value something can be different from how someone else values something. Like that basis is different.
I appreciate that clarification.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
continuing with that, what are the expected values for that? What would you expect? Would you value out of, say, a job, an
Hmm.
opportunity, maybe even an experience going to amusement park, to a show,
Hmm. Yeah, it's
where
different
you
for
spend
each
money.
area of life, right? Like
Exactly.
how, yeah, even the room you go to, right? Or
Yes.
the event you go to. Like your expectation and standards in a job interview is going to be different from a date,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's going to be different from going to a park and just enjoying yourself, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like if you, I think there's also less. I think some of these situations have less pressure or more pressure depending on the scale of intensity that you put yourself through.
Yeah.
So, like if you go to a park, your standard would be just you just want to have some relaxation, some peace, some relief, right? You probably don't expect to be too happy or have, an aha moment or anything like that.
Yes.
You don't expect to be too excited.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas if you are going on a date, then you might have a higher expectation because you put, um, I'm trying to look for a word, but it's not coming. There is a
Time,
word,
intention, energy.
uh, yeah, timing, but also like I think the word is close to kind of the word pedestal, where if you're on a date,
Oh, okay,
uh,
okay, okay.
you put actually, I think the word is attachment, right? You put a certain, there's nothing wrong with expectations as long as you're not attached to it. So, like,
mm,
if you go to the park, there is, you can always go to the park,
yeah.
right? Whereas if you have a first date, you might not have a second date. So you put a higher level of attachment, of expectation to it.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing with the job interview. You might not get the job interview, and you attach a particular meaning to it, right? And that
Mm,
meaning may not necessarily be true or even the only meaning or interpretation possible.
mm-hmm. And I'm glad you used the word attachment,
Hmm.
because that's the next thing, really, that another point that I'm targeting when it comes to the idea of the expectations of standards is knowing that how we have stuff set up now in society too, of everybody wins and everybody gets things. It leaves people to be very emotional
Hmm.
when it comes to if they meet or they don't get that opportunity of that outcome because of the standard and the value, the attachment they put into it. They're thinking and they're getting upset over that, which again, it starts to feed back into the whole setup too, with again with the entitlement. And we've already spoke on it, we were speaking on it earlier. What happens there is then you don't get to break down logically what happened, as well as you don't get to look at, okay, what else, really was causing also interference for me to see that, rather than me just reacting to the point that because I didn't get that opportunity or I didn't get that service, I didn't get whatever that is, that, oh, that's on them. Oh, it's because of da. And it's like you're starting to put off you not only growing from the situation and learning from the experience, knowing, okay, this is a certain reason why, like you're saying with those 6 different types of thinking caps and putting it there, you don't get to look at and improve upon something because of the fact that, again, you get stuck into the feeling and that attachment aspect too. You wanted to get that job but you didn't. You going to the park or to a certain park expecting to do some things like this, but then you find out that ride is closed, but then you're very mad and
Hmm.
upset because you can't go and do that ride. Or I
Hmm.
can have that type of attachment to, I'm doing this live And my mom or somebody can just come walk in the door and I can get frustrated and upset and be like, oh man, he just ruined the whole life. And
Mm-hmm.
what I'm really wanting to target with that is knowing that like you have to be cautious of literally how you think about things, because ultimately it can flip in your mind to a point where there could be that set experience was for something for you to learn, and you don't get that learned lesson because of the fact that you like, you know what, no, that's all them, and you don't take it in to figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
Like the brother's
Yeah.
saying right now, past experiences shape expectations. They do. They definitely do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like in dating culture, for example, I was thinking about uh, the U.S. dating culture versus the French. Like I read somewhere that the French don't really have dates, or at least not in the way that we do over here. Like,
Mm,
the big, fancy dinner or even the coffee or things like that. The one-on-one thing.
yeah.
What they do instead is they just have a lot of parties and events and home gatherings and things like that. And if you meet, the same person over and over again at a few parties, eventually the two of you might say, "Hey, you want to go for a walk
Yeah.
out of the party?" And then you might go for a walk around the block and get to know each other that way. Then that would be like the first time you know each other. And then if you hit it off, then you might exchange numbers and go, go for something deeper on the second time.
Courting.
But yeah. So the first date is not actually a date, it's just a walk. So there's less pressure. There's no standards. I mean, there's standards, but there's no less expectations and less attachment.
Yes. I'm glad you brought it to this realm, because for those watching, on top of the pandemic and all these other things going on, I don't know if y'all see, but I see the social fabric of relationships between men,
Mm,
women, and a whole group of folks is starting to really deteriorate. And a part of that is because, at least in the binary, this is my binary perspective. Kuna can give multiple other sides with it too, and I can also try and do the same. But from the binary perspective of both men and women, the expectations, especially on the first date or even going out, is already how at least women is, or I'm gonna say the word because whatever y'all know, fem
mm-hmm,
is is already sexist in the idea of that when a man is going to take you out, the man pays for everything on the first date,
mm-hmm,
even if he asks or if he didn't ask. And any aspect of you going half and half, also for the woman, doesn't meet that expectation. Depending, again, it is on the individual side. But what we see, at least right now in the Western culture, is like, no, you either pay for it all or that's it. And then sometimes that's taken advantage of. There's actually statistics that are out in different articles that literally 1 in 3 women, and of course it gets on the side of men too. There's some men that's doing it too. But again, we're not gonna do the all of this. We're going boom, boom, boom. 1 in 3 women admittedly in surveys said that they literally go out on dates with men that they know that they wouldn't, just for free food.
oh yeah, I've read that somewhere. Yeah.
And look, and it goes to show you again. This is just one fabric I'm talking about, since we was talking about dating relationships. Is that men are expected to provide and protect and to bring a multitude of things to this proverbial table, and
Mm,
that when women come, most of the time it is only the sexual aspect that is what's brought to the table. But nowadays it's also the money and things and stuff of that nature. But there's so much dissonance between that, because again, you come in and you have the sexist views of this stuff now being rearranged and thought about, but you are seeing the slow deterioration of these thoughts and how it has impacted relations between, at least, like I said, men and women on the binary spell. But that's
mm-hmm,
expectations, because we've already been taught this. It's like, yo, back way when, well, my grandfather and my grandmother walked and were this way. The whole idea of modern traditional is what's going on in that fabric, and how those expectations from what a traditional man and traditional woman is to what a
mm-hmm,
modern man and a modern woman is, and it's completely different.
mm-hmm. Yeah. My thing with the pandemic is more about the the loss of real-time in-person community
Yeah.
where like even before the pandemic there really wasn't much of a community over here in the United States in terms of like except maybe college campuses where people see each other often
Yeah.
other than college which is like and you finish college at age 22 so after 22 there really isn't much of a community anymore where people would see each other again and again often. There's like a series of events that people go to often, like
Yeah.
the Cool Lab or More Better Mondays, but those are not a real community. It's just an event that happens often
Yeah.
or every week, right? And and I think that's part of the hyper individualism and the colonialism that exists over here. And so what happens is and then that's how we also have the rise of dating apps like Tinder and things like that. And it's
Yeah.
like how you like going out with somebody just from a picture, there isn't time to like look at a person's character and commitments over a period of time,
Yeah.
you know. So no wonder there is a high divorce rate and high like all sorts of other problems,
Yes.
because we don't give each other time to just be acquaintances and friends first and really like and get to know each other and really like get to know somebody's character and commitments. I actually like value commitments
Yeah.
even more than character, like
Yes.
uh, because they say actions speak louder than words, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I say like patterns speak even louder than actions, meaning your consistent patterns of actions
Okay.
over time,
Yeah.
you know.
Get a baseline. Yeah. I mean,
Hmm.
and to add on top of that, that's why, because it's not a standard. The standard is
Right.
not when you're dating with purpose. Some folks is just
Hmm.
dating just to hook up. Some folks are just dating
Exactly.
to fill
That's how
that
we have
void,
Tinder. Yeah.
to date to fill a void. Others are dating with purpose to either move to a deeper commitment, whether if that is to be together or to go to the highest commitment, at least of what we know right now, is marriage. And
Mm-hmm.
what happens is because that's not a standard, it's not what a lot of people are valuing. Because since we're on that, like you said, that hyper individualism, not everybody has that expectation for that standard to literally be like, you know what, I value this type of things of really getting to know somebody versus literally, oh, off the first date, boom, we getting it going already. And it's like
Mm-hmm.
we don't give ourselves that time because not only we have the those standards not in play, we might not see that eye to eye, but also we have a push and we have the pressure from
Mm-hmm.
society to act and move in accordant fashions when it comes to being in relationships and things of nature. That's why you have the shaming, you have the insults, you have the guilt, guilting of people to get into relationships and things at a certain time and a certain age because of the fact that if you don't do that, you're weird or that's not happening. Knowing that part of that, it plays a part, but that shouldn't be the end all be all when it comes to figuring out if this is the relationship and things for you. Because again, wasted time, you can never get that back.
Mm-hmm.
But if you
Mm-hmm.
invest that time and you get to know the ins and outs of a person, whether if it's intimately, like in just that relationship, or even as a friendship, that time
Mm-hmm.
would not be wasted because you invested it in that way to really get to fully know the person versus just being like, hey, I just met you yesterday. Hey, let's go on a U.S. world trip and just go to all these different places, even though I just met you yesterday. You don't know who that person could end up being. You just only met them off of, you just like, oh, I like their picture. Or we had a nice conversation about the weather. It's like, no. No, if this person even likes driving. No, if this person even likes to venture off. Maybe they're a homebody. Maybe they just only like to go out once in a while and they don't like to do so many different things. They might have anxiety. They might, you learn the ins and out of stuff. Not like, of course, the deep dark secret. Everybody gonna hold stuff like that nature in. But like you were saying, we're not taking that time because guess what? We don't value that because time is precious.
Mm-hmm.
But the way that we use time We use time very early on in our youth to be like, oh, we're just making all these mistakes. You can definitely move with purpose at a very young age and still know where you want to end up going ultimately. And still, of course, have your quote unquote fun, but not to an extreme that you're like, dang, I wasted all that time when I could have been doing this, and that. And
Mhm.
now I need to hurry up and rush because of the fact that time keeps on ticking if I don't do anything now. And then we put ourselves in that state of fear. And that's not what you want to be in. Especially if you're trying to get to know somebody, you're trying to build something, you're trying to learn something. Being scared of trying to do it is not necessarily the best motivator. It is a motivator, but I wouldn't necessarily the best motivator to help you really overcome, learn, and actually be in the right mindset to make a decision.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, exactly. And yeah, like with the pandemic, we had, social distancing, and then everything went online on Zoom and Instagram, and I know those were necessary to protect ourselves from the disease,
Yeah.
but that's the price we're paying is the loss of that in-person community. However, conversely, I felt kind of lucky and blessed that a lot of things went online to Zoom
Mm-hmm.
because as somebody who doesn't drive, doesn't have a car, part of the hyper individualism is the ableism, right? Where people
Mm.
like me were not even considered at a lot of these open mics of these places. Things that used to be not accessible to me when they moved to Zoom,
Yeah.
they're now accessible. Like now I can even attend open mics all the way in India and I'm in the United States. That wasn't possible before. So there is a
Mm.
kind of a benefit to this.
Yes.
And until this pandemic, nobody even considered doing hybrid events. Like 7 years ago, I went to an event that I couldn't always go, and I asked, "Hey, can you open it up to Zoom?" And they said no, they refused. and
Mm.
and now there are several like open mics and places that are now considering like as businesses open up, they're considering doing hybrid events where it's in person, but they'll open it up to Instagram Live.
Yes.
Even More Better Mondays did it in January when they did the anniversary, and it was in person, but it was opened up to Instagram Live.
Yes. Again, that's learning on the fly, and what ends up
Hmm.
happening is, um, the the pros of the unintentional acts to modify things. You're like, oh shoot, yeah, we can literally still do these two things like that until we also figure out a way to get back to where we
Hmm.
were doing stuff originally. It's almost like
Hmm.
it's a happy coincidence, but it's something that's already was there but was never thought of, because it's like when you
Exactly.
can look at research, you can look at other and talk to people's own their own anecdotal experiences, especially going to school or going to an event. It's there's no greater feeling, or at least being able to experience it in person live,
Hmm.
versus again over and doing it on an Instagram live or on a Zoom or Twitch, wherever it is. There's still that that interpersonal connection, but it's not
Hmm.
like I can really pull out and like really be there and not like say touch and grab, but literally I'm there in that moment there, and you feel it. I mean, some people learn better when they go to school. They're there in class versus folks do it online and things and stuff of that nature. I mean, you can see how that is. We weren't prepped. We weren't prepped at all to help kids and a
Hmm.
lot of youth transition from literally in person to online learning. Only folks that at
Hmm.
least had an idea of that was those who are already being homeschooled. They already knew how to
Hmm.
already maneuver and do some things of that nature, because they go in person depending if they do it a few days or not, but they'll go in
Hmm.
person, drop off a packet, everything else they do right online on the computer, do the same thing, rinse, repeat, boom. But that's what ends up happening. It becomes a great coincidence that now you can start doing these things. We never thought about that, but at the same time, it causes another barrier for folks who this has already been happening. Now you're just looking at it, as well as a
Hmm.
barrier to, if we do get back to that, Now we do have both of the options to do so, but now where are we really gonna put more of our time to? So
Mm-hmm.
again, it's all up to those folks. Whatever they expect and what they're going to value the most. What's
Mm-hmm.
gonna get them the most views? What's gonna get them
Yeah,
the
what
most
is the basis
interaction?
of their value?
Yes,
What are their
exactly,
core values and what's the basis of that? Yeah.
exactly. So I mean, literally, y'all, when you have an expectation of something that you value, which the other word for standards we're using is what you value, those set rules, is definitely not going to be the same as another person. You might be on the same page about things, but again, nothing in this life that you can get, you'll be able to have 100% of it.
Mm-hmm.
There, you can't be 100% right on things from beginning to birth up to now. I know I've been wrong on a number of occasions. So if I were to have a percentage of how many times I was right to wrong, it ain't nowhere near 100. I don't even know if I'm barely even on 50. But at this point, it's just wrapping up. I'm not gonna wrap up yet, but at least wrapping this point here with having the expectation of something. Be prepared and be ready to deal with and balance the emotional side as well as logically why that happened. Be able to go back into to yourself and think, okay, what was the pros and cons creatively? What else could have been going? Because what that does is it sets yourself up for growth to figure out next time when you look for something else. Again, failure. It's okay to fail. Failure is a great teacher. It lets you know that, yo, you were almost there, but that wasn't the method you could have used in this particular case. It doesn't mean it's the end of the world. So even though you might have expected something, what is the favorite statistic we like to use? 9 times out of 10, what you may expect is not going to always be there. It's not going to always be sunny. It is not always going to be rainy. Your TV is not going to always work. So you expecting certain things, you have to be ready to be like, okay, this is what can happen. This is what might not end up happening. Not always getting deep into the what ifs, but again, regulating the emotions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, that's at least my part that I have for expectations. The expectations of standards. Is there anything that you had, Kundan, so to wrap up with this section and to get to wrapping up
Yeah,
for the
the main
show?
thing is I think it's okay to have standards and it's okay to have expectations. It could even be a good thing. It's just don't get attached,
Yeah.
too attached to your expectations or your standards. Well, especially to your expectations,
What's up,
right?
Rudy?
I think I think I think being attached to your standards is okay. It's more about being attached to your expectations because that
Mm,
is paves the way for disappointment and even entitlement, like you're saying, where you put and also don't put too much attachment, especially to the meaning that you're giving your expectations.
yes.
Yeah,
Yeah. No, exactly. I'm glad you did say that because that's literally how I wanted to do with that, with wrapping it up there too. But was there anything else left too that you wanted to leave with everyone for the end of the show?
I think also with regards to the pro label and the six thinking hats, that's just one example of diversifying your thinking as well as your meta thinking or your metacognition. But I think there are probably other models as well, so I highly suggest looking for like as many models as possible. Like just keep that in mind. Like think about diversifying your thinking and think about your thinking, like just keep doing that in general. Yeah.
In the words of Wu Tang on Dave Chappelle, diversify your bonds. if we got different stocks and different places to do things, I'm not finishing the whole quote, but if you got different stocks and things within a portfolio, always having something diverse, having multiple different perspectives, having multiple different ideas and tools to pull from, you have a multitude of ways to address a problem. So I'm with that. Now,
Mhm.
to wrap up, y'all, once again, thank you so much, Kundan. I always appreciate your time and always you coming in and leaving us with so many gems to pick up and use and to also help expand, not just on what I got my thinking. So I appreciate you so much for your time. Now, to wrap up, y'all, appreciate all y'all as well, too. Any more comments, please throw them down there. But when it comes to current events, please, please, please take time to be informed and aware of what's going on around you. Because you never know how close something can be happening at home to you and how that can have an effect on how you respond to things in your vicinity. So please take some time, read an article, look something up. You don't have to watch the news 24/7. Get a little few things. Second, when it comes to the pro label, even though we use pros to signify the positive side of things, in reverse, pro can also be used in the aspect of quote unquote a negative. So be aware of all the different thinking caps and the different ways that you can think about your thinking when you're in a certain subject. Don't just stay at that subject just because you stay at that subject and there is no room for anything else. Know that that subject may be connected to another side of a subject that actually gives you the whole full view. So stay aware and challenging multiple thoughts. Lastly, when it comes to the expectations of standards, again, echoing, do not or avoid being attached and expecting something from something that you value to a point that you are mad, upset, and you think that you are entitled to something when the world does not owe you anything or no type of explanation. So it's all up to you on how you set yourself up. It is fine to have standards, again, but watch where those expectations are. You really want to more so make them meet. At the end of the day, word is balance. Have a balanced perspective, view, onset, outset, all of those things. But other than that, y'all, this has been another episode of What's the Word Wednesdays, Season 2, Episode 29. I appreciate y'all's time, as well as I appreciate everyone who participated. Thank you again, Kundan. And don't forget, y'all, for those who are watching this now or later on Instagram or YouTube, please like, comment, share, and subscribe and hit that notification bell. I will, A.D.V.I.S. Speaks, please follow the YouTube because there'll be more content like this happening in the future. Especially I got a new phone. We're going to keep this going. So with that, y'all, until next time, we'll catch you next Wednesday and we'll see y'all back here. Other than that, peace, one love, and we're out.